On a bright, sunny day at a grand estate, a young lady stepped out into a garden bursting with red flowers. Her heel made a soft clicking sound as she walked, and she couldn't help but admire the beautiful scene before her. She happily declared that they would use these flowers to decorate the entire house, insisting it had to look absolutely perfect. Her maids readily agreed, suggesting they call for the gardener right away to begin the work. But just as they were making plans, the cheerful atmosphere was shattered. A dark cape whipped through the air, scattering petals in its wake. A tall, imposing man with dark hair suddenly landed in the middle of the vibrant garden. The lady's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure shock. He stood silently before her, his somber presence a stark contrast to the lively surroundings. The sunny garden fell completely quiet, overshadowed by the unexpected and mysterious visitor. The lady quickly composed herself, trying to make sense of the situation. She wondered what this man wanted, but as the Duchess, she knew she had to be friendly. With a practiced smile, she ordered her maids to prepare a meal for their unexpected guest. The man simply stared, his silence unsettling. Noticing his worn clothes, she thought maybe food wasn't what he needed. She offered to bring him a new suit, and when he still didn't respond, she enthusiastically promised to get him many more. Just then, one of her maids whispered the shocking truth. He was the Duke. Before the lady could fully process this, the Duke reached out, pulling her firmly toward him. The sudden closeness left her stunned. In that moment, it all clicked into place. This imposing man was the true owner of the castle. Breaking the long silence, he looked directly at her and called her his love. Despite her shock, the lady, Sylvia Lauren, puts on a convincing smile. She welcomes him back and cheerfully suggests they have a toast to celebrate. But inside her head, it's a completely different story. She curses her terrible luck, admitting to herself that she's nothing more than a thief. For the past month, she has been living in this grand castle without permission, illegally posing as the Duchess. The man she's been deceiving is Victor Aswan, a duke with a terrifying reputation. His name alone is said to make infants cry and hardened criminals fall in line. The royal family made him a duke, but his pastime involves ending his enemies, earning him a fearsome nickname. As Sylvia stares at the imposing man before her, she realizes the rumors didn't do him justice. He looks just as cruel as they say, and she can't stop herself from trembling. Maintaining her composure, Sylvia instructs her maids to take excellent care of the Duke. As she watches him, she realizes the rumors about his appearance were wrong. He wasn't ugly at all, but the long scar marking his cheek was just as the stories claimed. Before she can process this, Victor pulls her close again, his sudden move catching her completely off guard. This wasn't the reaction she expected. She was braced for anger, for being thrown out onto the street, not this strange silence. His lack of surprise makes her wonder if he already knows she's a fake. Then, a completely different and unbelievable thought enters her mind. Could he possibly be attracted to her? The absurd idea is shattered when they sit down for dinner. The way he tears into his food destroys any fantasy she had. Sylvia quickly dismisses the notion. It was impossible. The feared Duke Aswan would never knowingly share a meal with a common thief. As they eat in silence, Sylvia pieces together a new theory. The reason Victor hasn't thrown her out isn't attraction, it's that he simply doesn't care. Her presence is completely irrelevant to him. She reflects on everything she knows about his past. Victor Aswan started as a poor orphan, but his life changed when he met the Crown Prince. He pledged his loyalty and followed him, using his natural talents to become a celebrated war hero. However, his rough upbringing gave him a bad reputation. The nobles whispered that he was ill-educated and unpleasant, making it difficult for him to find a wife. Now, at 27, he's considered long past the ideal age for marriage. Sylvia takes a sip of wine as the final piece clicks into place. It's obvious. The fearsome Duke, who couldn't secure a bride, suddenly has won. This arrangement solves his problem, and she's the convenient solution. With her new theory in place, Sylvia decides on a course of action. She believes she can be a good partner to Victor, and her first step is to fully commit to her role as his wife. The thought of what that might require makes her nervous, but she's interrupted before she can dwell on it. Victor confronts her about her biggest lie, reminding her that she claimed to be carrying his child. The directness of his question makes her spit out her drink in shock. But Sylvia is a skilled liar and recovers in an instant. When he presses for details, asking if it's a boy or a girl, she deflects with a confident smile, telling him he'll have to wait. Victor's playful demeanor vanishes. He repeats her timeline back to her. It's only been 1 month. A sharp knife appears in his hand, its blade gleaming. With a cold smile, he gives her a chilling order. She had better make sure she delivers on her promise. The threat is clear. With a cold smile, Victor instructs Sylvia to ensure a healthy delivery, then calmly puts the knife away. She can only offer a strained thank you. As he rises from the table, Sylvia's composure begins to crack. Victor pauses by the maids waiting near the door and gives them a chilling order. They are to make sure the Duchess does not suffer a miscarriage. The threat behind his words is unmistakable. If anything were to happen to his heir, he would hold them all responsible. The maids tremble, terrified by his warning. Sylvia overhears the entire exchange, and the color drains from her face. This wasn't a gesture of protection, it was a carefully set trap. She realizes he might already know she's lying and is just waiting for her to slip up. Her life now hangs on producing a child that doesn't exist, and there is no escape. A chilling thought flashes through Sylvia's mind, a memory of Victor's cold resolve. Her survival instinct screams at her to run away right now. She scrambles toward the bedroom door, her only thought fixed on escape. Her hand closes around the handle, and she pulls it open, only to find Victor standing there, completely blocking her path. He looks down at her and calmly asks where she's going. Thinking fast, Sylvia curses him internally before putting on a sweet smile. She quickly lies, claiming she was just going to call for his carriage. But Victor isn't fooled. He dismisses her flimsy excuse, telling her to rest while he takes care of everything. He then walks past her and makes himself comfortable on her lounge, leaving her standing there, trapped. As Sylvia watches, a disturbing realization dawns on her. She's in his bedroom, but there's no bed. This means he has no intention of leaving her side. Sylvia knew they had to maintain appearances. To the staff, a married couple sharing a room was perfectly normal, but she and Victor were only playing a part. Since everyone was watching, they had no choice but to continue the charade. Her mind flashed back to an earlier time when Victor had corrected her, telling her that her name was Sylvia Aswan now. If she was going to pretend, he had said she needed to do it right. Back in the present, she tries to distract herself with embroidery. She felt trapped, and her thoughts turned desperate. Glancing at the sharp needle, she briefly wondered if she could use it to create a path to escape. Just then, her focus slipped, and she pricked her finger, letting out a small gasp. Suddenly, Victor was there, grabbing her injured hand. He took out a handkerchief and carefully wrapped the wound. He told her to stop the bleeding, his voice calm but firm. He explained that he sees enough blood on the battlefield and doesn't want to see it in his room. Sylvia stares at her bandaged finger, a bit stunned. She realizes Victor just tore up her expensive embroidery without a second thought, all to get a piece of cloth. He suddenly changes the subject, asking how long she has been at the castle. She answers that it has only been a month, and he comments on how tidy the place is. This comment throws her off. She's been spending lavishly on dresses and accessories, and her mind starts to race. She worries he thinks she's a wasteful spendthrift who does nothing all day. Is this his way of telling her to start carrying out a wife's obligations? But Victor's next question is completely unexpected. He asks her if she knows how to read. Sensing a trap, her intuition tells her to play dumb. She sweetly claims it is a shame, but she is illiterate. Victor isn't fooled for a second. A smirk plays on his lips as he declares that if she cannot read, then she will simply have to learn. With a predatory smile, Victor declared that if Sylvia couldn't read, she would simply have to learn. Flustered, Sylvia tried to laugh it off, claiming she was born stupid and that every teacher she ever had quit. She even joked that trying too hard at something could be dangerous. But Victor was not amused and refused to back down. He simply told her to try harder. His calm persistence was a battle of wills. She was clearly losing. Leaning in closer, he sharpened his tone. While he was off dealing with the grim realities of the battlefield, he expected his wife to be learning to read and write. He bluntly reminded her that she couldn't just live in his house for free. She had to earn her place. Sylvia's mind raced. This was about fulfilling her duties as a duchess. But if she gave in to this, what else would he demand? Victor left her with a chilling ultimatum. If she still couldn't read by the time he returned, he would personally see to her education. With his ultimatum delivered, Victor lightly flicks Sylvia on the forehead. He warns her it's better not to imagine what will happen if she fails. This simple gesture makes his complete determination clear. Sylvia's mind immediately short-circuits, conjuring up scandalous scenarios of his so-called personal education. Flustered, she quickly decides that simply playing the part of his wife is a much safer option than whatever he has planned. Though she finds the whole situation unfair, she steels her resolve. She has to at least try to live with him. Later that night, the battle of wills continues. While Victor sleeps soundly in the massive bed, Sylvia stubbornly tries to rest in a stiff, uncomfortable chair. She absolutely refuses to share a bed with the man. Still, as the hours crawl by, she admits that sleeping in a chair is miserable. This is going to be a very long night. Sylvia slumps into the uncomfortable chair, her body aching. This isn't the first time she's been left without a proper bed. Her stepsister Brianna made sure of that. Sylvia just knows her old family would laugh if they could see her now. Her mind drifts back to the constant misery. She remembers her stepmother's piercing screams, questioning if the food she cooked was even edible before slamming her fist on the table. She tried to explain she was only making a nutritious meal for her growing sister, but she was immediately accused of talking back. Her stepmother made no secret of her dislike, and Brianna was a perfect copy, always trying to take what little Sylvia had. But the root of it all was her father. His aristocratic title was a lie. He was a man with 3 wives and a gambling addiction that destroyed their fortune. In the end, unable to pay his debts, he took his own life, leaving Sylvia to clean up his mess. Sylvia's mind drifts back to the source of her pain, her father and the women he married. She saw them as opportunists and vowed never to become like them. Life with her stepmother was a constant battle of wills. Sylvia was treated like a servant, ordered to clean the entire house because her father's bankruptcy left them without staff. Her stepsister, Brianna, made things worse. Brianna would deliberately make a mess, spilling a drink right in front of her mother, who would then order Sylvia to clean it up without a second thought. Sylvia endured it all, clinging to the memory of her real mother's last words, a plea to always be kind. But kindness was a weapon her stepmother used against her. One day, the stepmother sweetly suggested it was time for Sylvia to marry. She then presented a much older, balding man as a suitor. In that moment, Sylvia understood the horrifying truth. Her stepmother wasn't just cruel, she was trying to sell her off. Sylvia remembered the exact moment she broke her promise. Apologizing to her late mother's memory, she decided she could no longer afford to be a kind person. That was the end of it. She packed a small suitcase, ready to leave the miserable house for good. Her stepsister, Brianna, caught her by the door, putting on a dramatic show. She asked how she could possibly live without Sylvia. Playing along one last time, Sylvia gently told her to take care of herself. But their mother wasn't fooled. She sneered, asking Brianna if she was sad to see her personal servant leave. When Brianna started to protest, the stepmother's hand flew, and a sharp sound cut through the air. The girl cried out in shock. Ignoring the shouts behind her, Sylvia walked straight out the front door. Her stepmother demanded she stay, but Sylvia didn't even look back. She had made up her mind. She wasn't going to live like that for another second. Sylvia was firm in her decision. She could not continue living like this. She had marched out of that house with such confident words, so sure of her escape. But now, reality was setting in. Alone on the street with a small suitcase, she had nowhere to go. The little money she had wouldn't last long at an inn, and panic began to rise as she wondered what to do next. As she saw it, there were only 2 paths to survival. First, she could marry a wealthy older man, the very fate her stepmother had tried to force on her. The second option was to find work doing chores, essentially becoming a servant all over again. The thought was crushing. After fighting so hard for her freedom, was she destined to fall back into the same life? Just then, a newspaper boy shouted that the Duke had completely wiped out his enemies. While others found the news frightening, a new idea seemed to spark in Sylvia's mind. The news about the Duke sparked a daring, almost insane plan. Sylvia remembered the articles she'd read about Duke Victor Aswana, a fearsome man known on the battlefield as the cold-blooded murderer. According to the papers, he had been away at war for 7 long years, with no sign of returning anytime soon. This was the perfect opportunity for a desperate woman. With unshakable resolve, Sylvia made her way to the Duke's enormous estate. The staff looked on in total shock as she introduced herself as their new Duchess. She confidently explained that she and the Duke had been in love for a very long time. To sell the story, She painted a vivid picture of a simple country girl who found the Duke gravely injured on the battlefield. She claimed she had nursed him back to health, and their love blossomed in secret under the stars. He had given her a ring as a promise, leaving her at his home for her own protection before he went back to confront his enemies alone. Sylvia calmly faces the Duke's staff, their expressions full of disbelief. The head butler finds her story about a secret romance completely illogical, and she can see the doubt written all over his face. Knowing her words alone aren't enough, she tells him she understands his skepticism, but came prepared with proof. With a steady hand, she produces her first piece of evidence, a simple ring. She explains that it was a precious gift from the Duke himself. The butler's eyes widen, but before he can process it, Sylvia presents her trump card. She places a document on the table, confidently declaring it to be their marriage certificate. Of course, it's just a clever fake written in a foreign language. This combination of proof is too much for the staff to handle. The completely overwhelmed butler, now scrambling to be a proper host, immediately orders the maids to prepare a room for their new duchess. It seems Sylvia's incredibly risky plan is actually working. The butler, now fully convinced, snaps into action. He orders the maids to prepare everything for their new duchess, noting she must be exhausted from her travels. Internally, Sylvia breathes a sigh of relief. With the Duke away, she figures staying for a short time won't be a problem. This was the beginning of her grand deception. Later, Sylvia is treated to fine tea, and she plays the part of a gracious lady perfectly. The maids are completely charmed by her polite nature, telling her how her arrival has brought life back to the boring mansion. Their adoration makes her feel secure, believing she can live comfortably here. Surrounded by beautiful new clothes, she thinks back on her difficult past. A deep tiredness settles over her, but it's overshadowed by a fierce desire to make this new life last. Gazing out at the garden, she vows to enjoy this happiness, even if it's only for a little while. Her peaceful afternoon drifts into a deep sleep, but her dreams are anything but calm. A nightmare takes hold. A man with cold, piercing eyes confronts her, and she instinctively knows this must be the Duke. He looks down on her, his expression intense and unreadable. Leaning in close, he grabs her chin and declares that she is nothing more than a fraud. His words echo her deepest fears, and Sylvia's terror is absolute. She jolts awake with a silent scream, her heart pounding against her ribs. Sunlight streams into the lavish room. Looking around, she breathes a shaky sigh of relief. It was just a dream. But her relief quickly turns to confusion. She wonders why she's lying in bed. She distinctly remembers dozing off in the armchair by the window. A new, chilling unease settles over her as she stares at the empty chair across the room. Someone had been in her room and moved her while she slept. A hazy memory from the night breaks through. She recalls the sensation of being gently lifted into strong arms. The image is blurry, but the feeling of being carried is undeniable. She tries to convince herself it was just part of the dream, but the thought won't go away. If someone was really in her room, then where did he go? The question hangs in the air, sending a chill down her spine. Unable to shake the feeling, she slips out of bed and cautiously peeks out her door, startling the maids standing guard outside. Two maids greet her with a cheerful "good morning" as she steps into the hallway. Sylvia, still a bit shaken, offers a hesitant greeting back. On the surface, everything seems perfectly normal. She tries to convince herself that the unsettling events were just a vivid nightmare, brought on by her constant anxiety about the Duke's return. With a sigh of relief, she decides it was all in her head and that she's just hungry. Feeling lighter, she starts to make her way downstairs. But as she rounds the corner, she walks right into a solid chest. A firm hand grabs her arm, steadying her before she can fall. Sylvia looks up, her breath catching in her throat. The man before her is a stranger, yet an unnerving sense of familiarity washes over her. Her mind scrambles. Could this be the man from her dream? The man breaks the silence, announcing he's leaving in 30 minutes. Sylvia's mind races as she stares at him. Could this person truly be the infamous Duke, Victor Aswan? His voice and appearance are completely different from the menacing figure she imagined. Lost in thought, she doesn't respond, which he takes as an invitation to tease her. A smirk plays on his lips as he suggests her silence must mean she's happy to see him go. Completely flustered, Sylvia quickly denies it. He leans in closer, playfully telling her she should at least wave a handkerchief and pretend to be sad. After confirming again that he is leaving, he releases her and walks away. The moment he's gone, the terrifying image from her nightmare floods her mind. She remembers the stories that Victor Aswan is a cold-blooded man who has ended countless lives. A chilling realization sets in. Even if his face seems kinder now, the monster she fears is still there underneath it all. From the sidelines, the maids whisper amongst themselves. They assume Sylvia must be heartbroken that the Duke is leaving after being back for less than a day. Recalling his playful taunt, Sylvia decides to commit to the act. She pulls out a pristine white handkerchief and pretends to dab at her eyes, putting on a convincing show of sorrow. But her performance has an unexpected effect. Victor smirks, asking if her dramatic farewell means she doesn't want him to return. Flustered, Sylvia immediately denies it. Dropping the act, she looks him in the eye and tells him plainly that he is to come back alive and shouldn't push himself too hard. His teasing expression softens into a genuine smile. He seems pleased by her honesty, remarking that she truly understands him. As they share a moment, the maids watch on, their cheeks flushing at the couple's surprisingly sweet dynamic. The maids watch on, completely captivated. They think to themselves that Sylvia and Victor are truly the couple of the century. For Sylvia, however, her simple well wishes don't feel like enough. She knows that every separation is filled with regret, and she decides she has to do something more. Acting on pure impulse, she grabs Victor's collar and pulls him closer, wishing him a safe trip. The gesture is a little clumsy, and it doesn't quite land with the impact she wanted. Frustrated with herself, Sylvia decides to be bolder. She stands on her tiptoes, gently touches his face, and places a soft kiss on his cheek. Victor is caught off guard for a second. Then, his teasing expression returns as he wraps his armored hand around her waist, pulling her in close. Before Sylvia can process what is happening, he leans down and gives her a proper, surprising kiss, leaving both her and the maids completely stunned. The simple kiss on the cheek clearly wasn't enough for Victor. Acting on impulse, he wraps an armored hand around Sylvia's waist and pulls her in close. Before she can even process it, he leans down and gives her a proper, surprising kiss that leaves her completely breathless. For a second, the world disappears, and Sylvia's heart pounds in her chest. She's shocked to realize how swept up she got in the moment. When Victor finally pulls away, he looks at her with a serious expression, telling her not to forget his words. Still flustered, Sylvia blankly asks what he meant. A smirk returns to his face as he gives his final command. She needs to study hard while he's gone. With that, he turns to leave, but a completely mortified Sylvia shoves him forward, telling him to just go already. As he walks away, she watches on, her mind reeling from the unexpected farewell. As Victor rides off to war with a determined look, Sylvia waves him goodbye with a handkerchief. But her sincere gesture hides a desperate wish. She silently begs for him not to return to the castle. 3 days later, her anxiety has only grown. Sylvia jolts awake in her bed, gasping for air and clutching the sheets in distress. Her mind races as she realizes her greatest fear is about to come true. All this time, she has been carefully faking a pregnancy, terrified that someone would discover her lie. Now, it seems her body is about to expose her secret. Overwhelmed with stress, she wonders what she can possibly do. In her frantic state, she accidentally knocks something over, and the sound of shattering glass echoes through the room. A moment later, a maid bursts in, calling out to her in alarm, catching Sylvia in her moment of pure panic. Finding Sylvia in a state of utter panic, the maid immediately calls out for a doctor. But Sylvia quickly grabs her, pleading with her to stop. She insists she's fine, but her distressed expression tells a different story. Realizing her secret is on the verge of being exposed, Sylvia thinks fast. With tears in her eyes, she explains that if news of her condition reaches Victor at war, his enemies will use the tragedy to destroy his morale. She frames the situation as a necessary sacrifice for the sake of the war effort. She promises she'll be the one to tell Victor the devastating news, but only after he returns home victorious. It's a calculated, heart-wrenching performance. Completely convinced by Sylvia's apparent selflessness, the maid is moved to tears. Believing she is helping a heartbroken mother protect her husband, she agrees to keep the entire incident an absolute secret. Sylvia's lie is safe for now. With her life firmly in place, Sylvia's performance fools everyone. The head maid is overcome with guilt, calling the supposed tragedy a terrible shame and apologizing for not taking better care of the Duchess. Playing the part of a selfless leader, Sylvia calmly reassures her staff, telling them not to worry and to return to their duties. She insists her personal sorrow shouldn't disrupt the entire household. The maids, completely convinced, are moved to tears by her supposed strength. Internally, Sylvia hardens her resolve. Just as Victor fights for them on the battlefield, she must fight her own battle at home. This act is the only way to ensure the truth never reaches him. Now filled with pity, the staff begins to dote on her constantly. They shower her with snacks, new dress catalogs, and special meals, all trying to comfort the woman they believe is a grieving, benevolent saint. Her deception is a complete success. The staff continues to shower Sylvia with affection, bringing her lavish meals and beautiful bouquets to lift her spirits. She is touched when a maid presents her with flowers she once mentioned she liked, but a brief pang of guilt flashes through her. The maid quickly reassures her, insisting they are lucky to serve such a kind person. Smiling, Sylvia agrees that she is fortunate to have them as well. For a moment, Sylvia basks in the peaceful atmosphere. She feels secure in her home, the staff is happy, and Victor is fighting his own battles far away. She wishes this tranquility could last forever. But her day is suddenly interrupted. A messenger appears before her, holding a single, withered flower that seems to crumble in his gloved hand. He announces that it is a gift from the Duke. Sylvia's smile vanishes, replaced by pure shock as she stares at the dead bloom. What could this possibly mean? With her life firmly in place, Sylvia finally finds a moment of peace. Instead of confusion, she feigns absolute delight. Sylvia accepts the decaying flower with a brilliant smile, calling it beautiful. She even summons a maid, ordering her to quickly water the precious gift to save it. The messenger is stunned, happily declaring that the Duke and Duchess must truly be in love. His internal thoughts reveal this was exactly what the Duke predicted she would do. Once alone, Sylvia smirks triumphantly. Her act had worked perfectly. The messenger offers to relay a message back to the Duke, and Sylvia continues her brilliant performance. With a sweet smile, she tells him to pass on her words. The Duke should never come back and must stay right where he is. To the messenger, it sounds like a wife's desperate plea for her husband's safety. But the soldier simply grins, remarking that the Duke predicted she would say that. He then presents her with a letter. The message inside is cruel and calculated. Victor describes his horrific life on the battlefield, comparing it to her peaceful days at the estate. He was being crushed like garbage while she slept soundly. This was the real test, but Sylvia remains perfectly calm. She states that her curiosity is satisfied and tells the messenger to drop the act. Unfazed, she gives him a new message, asking if the Duke is eating well. The messenger notes that Victor had anticipated that question, too. The messenger grins and pulls something from his bag. He holds out a lumpy, dirt-covered potato, explaining this is what the Duke eats on the front lines. Sylvia's maids are horrified by the sight of the unappetizing meal. While they panic, Sylvia recalls the Duke's cruel letter meant to make her feel guilty. But he has no idea that she grew up eating things just like this to survive. Before anyone can stop her, Sylvia grabs the raw potato and takes a huge, defiant bite. The maids scream, begging their lady to stop, but she ignores them. She calmly states that if the Duke is eating it, then it's a precious food they must not waste. This is how she will share in his hardship. The messenger is completely floored. He notes with a smile that the Duke will definitely be surprised by this news. Hearing that, Sylvia smirks to herself. Finally, she had done something her husband couldn't predict. Her risky decision was a total success. A messenger from the front lines asks Sylvia why she doesn't plan to stay longer. Playing her part, she explains that she's received a reward vacation and intends to visit her hometown. The messenger then delivers a personal question from the Duke himself, asking about the health of the baby in her stomach. With a flawless smile, Sylvia reassures him. She tells him to let the Duke know that the only thing to worry about is his own safety. As she wishes him a safe return, the messenger beams, promising to relay the message. Once he's gone, however, her true thoughts emerge. She secretly prays that the war continues indefinitely, so her newfound peace won't be broken. Believing her husband won't be back for a long time, she relaxes. But a year later, her peaceful days come to an abrupt end. The Duke stands before her, having returned from the war alive and well. Sylvia is inwardly horrified, realizing her freedom is over. With a pained expression, Sylvia puts on the performance of a lifetime. She tearfully tells the Duke she lost their child, claiming the stress of his absence was just too much to handle. The Duke listens silently, his face unreadable. He then asks if their child was a son or a daughter. Sticking to her story, Sylvia explains it was too early to know. His only response is a quiet, "I see." This catches her completely off guard. For a second, she wonders if the cold-hearted Duke is actually feeling sorry for her. Is it possible he's showing empathy? But just as that thought crosses her mind, he yanks her into a sudden, firm embrace. The mood shifts instantly. Leaning down, a smirk spreads across his face as he asks if she studied a bit for her role. In that moment, Sylvia's blood runs cold. He knows. He knew she was faking it all along, and now she's completely caught. Sylvia's mind races as she's held in his arms. She'd always assumed he knew their love was an act, but his question about her studying for the role confirms he saw right through her performance. He's been toying with her, playing dumb. She asks what he means, but internally she's scrambling for a way out. She tries to change the subject, suggesting he must be hungry after his long journey. The tense standoff moves to the dining room. As the Duke aggressively cuts his steak, he gives her a shred of hope, mentioning he'll be leaving again in a few days. Believing him, Sylvia lights up and eagerly asks when he's scheduled to depart. The Duke looks at her coolly and crushes her expectations. He states plainly that he will not be leaving her side. He was lying. Stunned into silence, Sylvia can only stare as she realizes he's not kidding. Her freedom is truly over. Sylvia's smile freezes on her face. The Duke smirks, noting his wife doesn't seem to like him being in his own house. Realizing she needs to switch tactics, Sylvia forces a bright expression. She insists that's not it at all. It would simply be a waste for a talented hero like him to stay cooped up at home. Trying to sound supportive, she encourages him to pursue his big dreams. She tells him to go conquer the world, even suggesting he could become the emperor. Her desperation is obvious as she begs him to return to the battlefield for any reason. But the Duke isn't buying it. He coolly informs her that her words of encouragement sound more like a curse. Then he crushes her last hope, stating what she wants is never going to happen. Defeated, Sylvia realizes his decision is final. Trapped, her mind floods with fear, imagining the worst. With a trembling voice, she asks if he'll ever go to war again. The Duke smirks, telling her that his time at home is just a break. A tiny spark of hope appears in Sylvia's eyes as she quickly asks how long he'll be staying. He looks at her and says 1 month. Relief washes over her. She just has to survive for 30 days, and then he'll be gone again. But that night, her relief vanishes. The reality of sharing a bedroom with him sinks in. As she hesitates, the Duke, already lying in bed, tells her to sleep properly. He assures her he won't do anything. Still, Sylvia refuses, insisting she's fine on the sofa. He then asks if she plans to sleep on the sofa like last time. He casually mentions that he had to carry her to the bed himself while she was asleep. Sylvia freezes, completely stunned by this revelation. She had no idea he had ever moved her. Despite the shock, she decides she's still more comfortable sleeping on the sofa, away from him. The Duke seems annoyed by her stubbornness. He asks if she plans to sleep on the sofa for the whole month, forcing him to listen to her annoying rustling every night. Sylvia boldly declares that yes, that is her plan. But the Duke has a counterproposal. He calmly informs her that if she does that, he will simply have to move her to the bed himself every day. The threat hangs in the air, a clear display of his control. Terrified by the thought, Sylvia's resolve crumbles instantly. She scrambles into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. With a trembling voice, she says she hopes he won't just move her around like a puppet while she sleeps. The Duke is almost offended, remarking that he didn't realize her opinion of him was so low. He then grips the blanket beside her, his presence much closer than she expected. Sylvia freezes, realizing there is truly no escape. Trapped in bed, Sylvia's heart pounds wildly. She panics, realizing her hand is resting on his chest, and she has to fight a confusing, unwanted feeling. Deciding her only option is to go on the offensive, she puts on a brave face. She leans over him and boldly asks him what he wants to do. The Duke is clearly taken aback by her sudden confidence. He smirks, asking if she thought he was scared or surprised by her move. With a defiant smile, Sylvia tells him he's completely wrong if he thinks she can be easily swayed. But her bluff is called immediately. In one swift motion, he grabs her hand and pulls her down until their faces are inches apart. Her confidence completely shatters, replaced with pure shock. He proves once again that she has absolutely no control in this room. With the Duke looming over her, Sylvia tells herself she won't be dragged along by his games. But he just smirks and leans in, his presence overwhelming. She completely freezes, letting out a tiny, nervous hiccup as he gets impossibly close. For a moment, he seems to pull back, looking thoughtful. Then, in one quick motion, he yanks the pillow from right under her head. Sylvia is left stunned and confused. The Duke looks down at her, calmly asking what she was expecting to happen. Holding up his prize, he tells her he's just borrowing it and will return it after use. He then lies down on his side of the bed, placing her pillow under his head. Utterly baffled by the bizarre turn of events, Sylvia shoots upright. All her fear is replaced by pure annoyance as she demands to know why on earth he just stole her pillow. He has once again left her completely off balance. The Duke simply settles into her pillow, looking completely at ease. He calmly reminds her that this was his space long before she ever came to the castle. With a smug grin, he looks her over and asks if she was expecting something more to happen between them. Completely flustered, Sylvia's face burns as she insists she just wants to sleep comfortably. But the Duke isn't finished with his games yet. He leans back and warns her not to get any funny ideas, like touching his hand while he's asleep. The absolute nerve of him. After everything he just pulled, he had the audacity to accuse her. Sylvia is speechless with rage. With the strange argument settled, they both turn their backs to each other, a clear line drawn down the middle of the bed. But while the Duke seems ready to sleep, Sylvia is wide awake and fuming. Lying next to this infuriating man, she knows getting any rest tonight is going to be impossible. After a restless night spent fuming, Sylvia finally drifts off. She wakes to the morning sun and an incredible feeling of comfort. She's warm, cozy, and snuggled up against something wonderfully soft. But then it hits her, this isn't a pillow. Her eyes snap open, and the cozy dream turns into a nightmare. She's resting her head directly on the Duke's chest. He's wide awake, looking down at her with a smirk. He calmly asks if she's finally up, wondering just how long she planned on using him as a bed. Utterly mortified, Sylvia lets out a silent scream and scrambles backward, her face burning with embarrassment. She stammers, demanding to know what he's doing. Completely unfazed, the Duke simply adjusts his robe. He coolly turns the tables, stating that he's the one who should be asking that question. She had spent the entire night curled up against him, and he had let her. Still reeling from the morning's events, Sylvia glares at the Duke. As he holds her robe with a smug grin, she can only think one thing: he is an absolutely lecherous man. Later, Sylvia tries to calm herself with a cup of tea, but her mind is a mess. A maid notices her troubled expression and asks if the tea is not to her liking. Sylvia quickly reassures her that it's delicious. She explains that she was just thinking about the Duke's return to the battlefield after the holiday. Privately, she admits her real fear, that he might not come back. The maid tries to comfort her, suggesting that once the war ends, they can finally live together happily. Sylvia forces a small laugh, thinking there's no way that would ever happen. Just then, a sharp knock sounds at the door. An attendant named Marilyn enters with news. She informs Sylvia that the Duke is visiting the palace next week, so she must be dressed appropriately. With a sly smile, Marilyn adds that there is a dress from 8 years ago, but it probably doesn't fit anymore. Sylvia pushes back against Marilyn's sly remarks. After a moment, she announces that she will handle her own dress for the palace visit. She's determined to get out of the mansion and see what's fashionable for herself, wanting to choose something that will actually make her happy for once. Later, dressed in a gorgeous new outfit and a stylish hat, Sylvia enjoys a rare moment of freedom while out on the town. She feels confident and refreshed. But her pleasant day is cut short when the Duke suddenly appears, blocking her path. He looks her up and down with a condescending smirk, asking where she's been, all dressed up like a true lady. Before she can reply, he leans in with a look of smug satisfaction. He coldly reminds her that whatever she bought, it was all paid for with his money. Sylvia freezes, horrified. He had effortlessly crushed her brief taste of independence, making it clear who is really in control. Sylvia's smile turned sharp and sarcastic. Looking at her new outfit, she tells the Duke her hat must have been purchased with an enemy's head, and her dress with the arm of a commander. She thanks him sweetly for all his hard work on the battlefield. The Duke smirks, playing along with her dark humor. He points to her necklace, adding that it was worth the price of an arrow to his shoulder. Hiding her face with her fan, Sylvia calls him a bad man, but her mind is racing. She can't believe her luck, running into him on her one day out. At least he isn't covered in blood this time. She remembers just yesterday when he casually dragged a massive bear through the castle. Then there was the time he presented her with a terrified rabbit, suggesting she'd like jewelry made from its fur. The thought of his cruelty still makes her shudder. What a barbaric man. As if her thoughts summoned the proof, servants announce they're bringing in a deer the Duke hunted. Sylvia flinches, desperate to escape his barbaric world. Changing the subject, the Duke declares he's getting her a new suit. Sylvia challenges him, asking if he even knows her measurements. He grabs her arm, annoyed by her defiance. She tries to compromise, suggesting she can pick the fabrics herself and let a tailor handle the rest at the castle. But the Duke won't have it. He insists they will get her measurements taken today, together. Sylvia panics at the thought of being seen with such an intimidating man. Trying a different tactic, she sweetly asks if he'll go alone. He just smirks, informing her they will leave together in 30 minutes. As he walks away, she can only grit her teeth. A leopard truly can't change his spots. 30 minutes later, the mansion staff is in a frenzy. The maids whisper excitedly amongst themselves, shocked that the Duke and Sylvia are going out together. Upstairs, Sylvia sits patiently as her maids put the finishing touches on her hair and makeup. One of them comments that she must be thrilled to be going out with His Grace. Playing along, Sylvia agrees sweetly, adding that he even promised to buy her cinnamon sugar cookies. They gush over how romantic he is. As she looks at her reflection, Sylvia has to admit she likes the final look. But her smile fades as a troubling thought hits her. How does the Duke know her tastes so perfectly? It seems impossible. Her suspicion only grows when she sees the ride he prepared. Waiting outside is a magnificent carriage, lavishly decorated with flowers as if for a wedding. Sylvia stares, completely bewildered by his over-the-top gesture. His need to control every single detail is becoming unbearable. As the Duke approaches, Sylvia silently fumes. This whole setup, with the flowers and the fancy ride, feels more like a date than a forced shopping trip. He greets her simply, and she glares back, thinking he's a truly detestable man. Still, she has to admit he looks incredibly handsome. No one would ever guess he's a war-obsessed tyrant. Forcing a bright smile for the staff, she links arms with him and plays the part of the happy Duchess. The moment they're alone inside the carriage, however, her cheerful act vanishes. Noticing her stony expression, the Duke asks what she's unsatisfied with now. Sylvia coolly suggests he should have servants escort them, explaining it's a basic precaution. But he immediately shuts her down, flatly stating that she's asking for too much. His control is absolute, leaving no room for even the smallest of her suggestions. The Duke's voice cuts through the tense silence, coolly asking Sylvia if she'll do it. Before she has a chance to retort, the carriage hits a rough patch and lurches to one side. The sudden movement throws Sylvia off balance, sending her tumbling directly into the Duke's arms. He catches her effortlessly, his grip steadying her against him. Flustered, Sylvia wonders why the carriage shook so violently. The space feels impossibly small, and she can feel her heart starting to race from the unexpected closeness. Just as quickly, the carriage stops. The Duke announces their arrival and offers a hand to help her down. When she hesitates, he simply tells her to hold it. Reluctantly, she places her hand in his. A jolt of surprise runs through her as their skin touches. His hand is incredibly warm. Confused by her own reaction, Sylvia can't help but wonder if all men have such a high body temperature. They soon arrived at a luxurious boutique. A shopkeeper greeted Sylvia warmly by name, welcoming her inside. Putting her performance back on, Sylvia beamed and announced she was there to order a suit for the gentleman with her. She grandly instructed the staff to bring out their most fashionable clothes. The shopkeeper, clearly curious about Sylvia's new companion, noted the Duke's powerful build. While she professionally led him away for measurements, Sylvia acknowledged to herself that bringing a man here was a first. Of course, the staff was going to be curious. While the Duke was being measured, Sylvia had a moment to think. She realized that, so far, no damaging rumors had spread about her connection to him. It was simple, really. No one knew who she was. And even if people did find out, she figured they would just jump to the conclusion that she was some noble's secret companion. The shopkeeper soon returned, confirming the suit would be ready in 3 days. Sylvia felt a wave of relief. This uncomfortable situation would all be over soon. That feeling, however, was cut short by a sudden thought. Shoes. He couldn't possibly wear his rugged warrior boots with a tailored suit. She immediately turned to the Duke and suggested they pick out some proper footwear. Without waiting for a response, she led him to the shoe display and pointed to a polished pair of black dress shoes, decisively telling the staff they'd take them. With that handled, her eyes wandered through the shop, briefly captivated by a pretty item on another display. As her eyes landed on a pretty pair of women's shoes, the Duke noticed her interest. He calmly instructed the staff to pack that pair as well. Sylvia was genuinely surprised by the kind gesture and offered him a warm thank you. Seeing an opportunity, she took his generosity and ran with it, pointing at one accessory after another and telling the staff to pack everything. Later, they walked through the city, with a cheerful Sylvia now clinging to his arm. She reflected that she had completely misjudged him. He wasn't stingy at all. In fact, he was incredibly generous. She also had to admit he was quite handsome without all that armor. This pleasant thought was suddenly overshadowed by the vicious rumors she'd heard about him, stories of a man whose face was ravaged by scars, fire, and battle. She wondered if the man next to her was truly that same feared figure. Her thoughts were cut short when a man's voice called her name. Turning around, she saw an old acquaintance, James, approaching with a smile. The man who called her name is James, an old acquaintance. He strikes up a pleasant conversation about a book they once discussed, telling her the author released a new edition. As Sylvia says she'll have to buy it, James's gaze finally lands on the imposing man standing beside her. His friendly demeanor evaporates, and he cautiously asks who her companion is. A confident smirk appears on Sylvia's face. She tightens her grip on the Duke's arm and proudly introduces him as her husband, deliberately stating his full, fearsome title, Duke Victor Aswan. The name alone is enough to send a chill down James's spine. His face goes pale as he stammers out the Duke's notorious reputation as a war fanatic. The realization is too much for him to handle. Consumed by pure terror, James lets out a panicked shriek and bolts, leaving a very satisfied Sylvia standing with her formidable husband. As they stood alone again, the Duke calmly told Sylvia she shouldn't have scared the man off like that, especially since James didn't even know she was married. Sylvia simply replied that he never bothered to ask. With a smirk, Victor noted she looked exactly like an unmarried woman, remarking that she must have tried hard to maintain that appearance. Annoyed, Sylvia told him he was going too far. But the satisfaction of scaring James away was too good to pass up. An idea sparked in her mind. She suddenly announced that they should go buy a super big diamond ring. Taken aback, Victor asked why. He then added a chilling suggestion. The ring could commemorate all the rivals he had taken down across the nation. He leaned in, adding that among those rivals was a man named James. Sylvia froze for a second, wondering why he was so fixated on her old acquaintance. But the thought of a brand new diamond quickly won her over. Deciding to ignore his strange comment, she cheerfully pulled him along. As their carriage rolled through the streets, Victor glanced at his wife's happy expression and asked if she was pleased. Beaming, Sylvia confirmed it. She couldn't stop looking at the massive diamond sparkling on her finger. Reflecting on her past, she admitted to herself that she'd come from nothing, and this was her very first diamond ring. The whole day had been surprisingly pleasant. Sylvia had braced herself for a disaster, but the Duke was much calmer than she anticipated. He wasn't cruel or demanding, just a little sarcastic. Still, his bizarre comment back at the shop lingered in her mind. He claimed the ring was to commemorate taking down an enemy. The man was definitely unsettling, but for now, Sylvia was too pleased with her new jewel to overthink it. As Sylvia reflected on her strange new husband, she remembered his terrifying reputation. People called him a war maniac, a monster who dominated the battlefield. But spending time with him, she didn't think he was a terrible person, just a man who only knew conflict. Even so, a feeling of unease lingered. Later, Victor asked where she used to live. Sylvia explained she was from Manhwa, a small, faraway village that took a week to reach. He then asked why she left her home to come to a city. She admitted that if she had stayed, she would have been forced to marry a bald old man. Victor connected the dots, asking if that was why she ran away and disliked marriage. Annoyed, Sylvia insisted that marriage was a major life event. She complained that she'd spent her life eating bruised potatoes, only to be sold off. Victor coolly remarked that this must be why she ate sprouted potatoes so well. Sylvia was stunned, wondering why he was bringing that up now. Still reeling from their strange conversation, Sylvia was caught off guard when Victor smirked. He teased that he'd have to work hard not to go bald, otherwise she might run away from him, too. Despite herself, Sylvia found it amusing. This marriage was certainly more interesting than she'd anticipated. Later, as she settled into the Grand Ducal Mansion, a maid rushed in to announce a visitor. Sylvia was immediately on guard, wondering who could possibly be looking for her. Her question was answered as a young girl barreled into the room and threw her arms around her. Her stepsister, Brianna. Sylvia froze in shock, questioning why she was here. Just then, her stepmother appeared, putting on a show of being worried sick. Sylvia played along, politely insisting she was fine. But her stepmother's mask quickly slipped. With a sly smile, she said she'd already heard everything from the servants, making her manipulative intentions perfectly clear from the start. Victor's arrival cut the tension in the room. He calmly asked Sylvia who the two women were. Her stepmother and Brianna flinched, visibly shaking as Sylvia identified them as her family. Victor then did the last thing anyone expected. He announced it was time for a meal and that they should all eat together. He ordered a maid to have the chef prepare something special, insisting her family be shown respect. Sylvia was stunned. This was a serious dilemma. She wanted them gone, but her new husband was playing the perfect host. Soon, an incredible feast covered the dining table. The stepmother and Brianna stared in awe at the lavish spread, their terror quickly replaced by greed. She realized the stories about Victor had to be false. He wasn't a scary monster at all. In fact, she thought with a sly smile, this situation could work out very well for her. The stepmother watched Victor with a smug smile, her mind racing. Judging by his lavish hospitality, she concluded he must be completely obsessed with Sylvia. This was a golden opportunity. Nearby, Sylvia was baffled. She couldn't understand why Victor was being so polite, or what new scheme her stepmother was cooking up. Victor simply stated that as his wife's family, they deserved a proper welcome. The stepmother thanked him for the grand meal, but then her tone shifted. She sighed dramatically, claiming that they couldn't possibly afford such a luxurious feast. Before Sylvia could react, her stepmother suddenly grabbed her hand. With everyone's attention on her, she announced their true purpose. They were here to get their beloved Sylvia back. The declaration hung in the air, leaving both Victor and Sylvia completely stunned. Sylvia stared, wondering what on earth her stepmother was plotting now. The stepmother's dramatic declaration hung in the air. Sylvia stared in disbelief, completely baffled by this new scheme. Without missing a beat, she launched into a performance for Victor. She painted a picture of a devoted parent, claiming she had worked her fingers to the bone to raise Sylvia. She gestured toward her stepdaughter, remarking on how quickly she'd grown up. Then came the biggest lie of all. She made sure Sylvia ate well, even if it meant she and her own daughter, Brianna, were left with only spoiled potatoes. Victor listened to the tale with a knowing smirk, clearly not buying a word of it. He simply leaned back, finding the whole show rather amusing. Meanwhile, Sylvia was fuming. She remembered the reality all too well. While her step-family feasted on meat and fine food, she was always left with thin, watery porridge. The sheer audacity of her stepmother's lies was almost too much to bear. Victor considered the stepmother's tearful performance for a moment, then calmly sliced into a thick steak. He called her story incredibly sad, noting how awful it was that she was apparently too heartbroken to eat. The stepmother watched him, expecting a sympathetic gesture. Instead, Victor simply smirked and ate the perfect bite of steak himself, savoring it right in front of her. Both she and Brianna stared in total shock. Sylvia was inwardly impressed by his bold move, even if his table manners were lacking. Trying to smooth things over, Sylvia urged her family to eat. Victor, however, wasn't finished. He told the stepmother her tale so moved him, he just had to eat while listening. He then casually mentioned that he'd also eaten spoiled potatoes on the battlefield, so he completely understood her struggle. The pointed comment left her speechless. With his point clearly made, Victor picked up his glass, ready to get down to business. With the pleasantries over, Victor cut right to the chase. He leaned forward with a knowing smile, demanding the real reason they wanted Sylvia back. The stepmother immediately launched into her performance, dabbing a fake tear from her eye. She repeated her lie about raising Sylvia like her own daughter before pivoting to a new strategy. She feigned concern for Sylvia's future, painting a picture of a worried wife who would be devastated if her husband never returned from war. The stepmother claimed Sylvia had sleepless nights from missing him. In reality, Sylvia was losing sleep dreading his return. Victor played along with a sharp grin, promising to come back sooner, which only horrified Sylvia. Finally, the stepmother revealed her true angle: who would be responsible for Sylvia if he couldn't come back? The greedy question left Sylvia seething at the sheer audacity. Victor cut through her act with a cold smirk, pointing out how she spoke as if he were guaranteed to die in the war. Unfazed, the stepmother painted a grim picture of battlefields and the possibility of Sylvia becoming a young widow. As a mother, she argued she couldn't allow Sylvia to remain in such an unstable situation. To bolster this argument, she brought up a past engagement Sylvia had. She explained that their family was poor and had no dowry, but this former fiancé was a good man who was going to secure Sylvia's future. Listening in horror, Sylvia realized her stepmother was twisting her past for personal gain. Finally, the greedy woman revealed her true motive. She demanded Victor provide financial assurance for Sylvia's care. If he refused, she'd be forced to take Sylvia back. It was never about concern. It was all about the money. With the stepmother's greedy demand hanging in the air, Victor's expression shifted. He completely ignored her, turning his cold gaze directly to Sylvia. He asked for her opinion on the matter, then immediately mocked her lack of one, noting how her mother had wrapped her around her finger. Sylvia was trapped in an impossible position. If she defied her stepmother, her secrets would be exposed. But if Victor didn't pay, she'd be dragged back to that awful life, forced to serve an unpleasant old man. Steeling herself, she decided she would never go back. Her hesitation sent the stepmother into a rage. She lunged forward, grabbing Sylvia's arm in a punishing grip. But before she could tighten it, a silver blade flew past, striking her hand and forcing her to let go. Across the table, Victor calmly held a small dinner knife. He played it off coolly, suggesting it must have slipped from his grasp. The message, however, was a direct and serious warning. Victor coolly explained that he was simply trying to catch a bug. The stepmother, clutching her hand where the knife had struck, was speechless. He informed her that Sylvia had already decided to stay, so there was no need for concern. To her absolute horror, Victor then casually mentioned the wealthy older man she had arranged for Sylvia. The stepmother's face went pale as she realized he knew everything. Turning to a flustered Sylvia, Victor declared that apparently his wife preferred him more. He then picked up the dinner knife, commenting that his skills had gotten rusty since he couldn't even hit a small bug. Staring at the trembling woman on the floor, he called it a lucky bug, promising mercy for now. He added that the upcoming war would be good practice, ensuring he wouldn't miss his target next time. With that final threat, he turned and walked away, leaving her utterly defeated. But Victor wasn't finished with her yet. He leaned over the trembling stepmother, the small knife glinting in his hand. He mocked her fear, asking if she was worried he wouldn't come back from the battlefield. He told her not to worry. His hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her to meet his gaze. Victor then made a chilling promise. He would personally wipe out every enemy and end the war. That way, he said with a smirk, Sylvia would never be lonely. His message was received loud and clear. The terrified woman scrambled to her feet, grabbed her other daughter, and fled the mansion without looking back. Victor calmly ordered his staff to escort them out. In the aftermath, another lady of the house approached Sylvia, concerned by the shocking ordeal. Sylvia, however, felt a strange sense of relief and excitement now that her stepmother's plans had completely failed. As the shock of the confrontation faded, Sylvia began to process everything. She finally understood Victor's true intentions. He hadn't just been cruel to her stepmother, he was actively helping her escape a terrible fate. His confident declaration that his wife clearly preferred him echoed in her mind. Sylvia felt her cheeks grow warm, completely flustered by his directness. She couldn't believe he said something so embarrassing with a completely straight face. A maid noticed her untouched, cold tea and offered to warm it, but Sylvia gently waved it off. She explained she needed a walk to clear her head. Strolling through the sunlit gardens, she tried to sort through her overwhelming feelings of relief and confusion. Everything had changed in an instant. Her quiet reflection was suddenly interrupted by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Sylvia looked up, her eyes widening in surprise as a lone rider headed straight for her. The mysterious rider was none other than the Duke himself. Sylvia watched as Victor gracefully dismounted and approached her. He casually asked if she was out for a walk. Still flustered from their earlier encounter, Sylvia confirmed that she was, her heart pounding at his sudden appearance. Victor then gestured to his horse and asked if she wanted to try riding. Sylvia quickly explained that she couldn't, as she had never learned. But her answer didn't seem to matter to him. With a confident smile, he simply stated that he would teach her. Before she could even react, Victor swiftly lifted her off the ground. He gently placed her on the saddle, then mounted the horse right behind her, his arms caging her in. Trapped against his chest, Sylvia was completely stunned by his bold actions. Victor, however, looked perfectly content with the arrangement, ready to start their impromptu lesson. Stuck between Victor's arms, Sylvia was completely speechless. The Duke broke the silence, calmly telling her to get a good hold of him. Sylvia was confused for a moment. Did he really want her to just grab onto him? She cautiously rested a hand on his chest, figuring it was her only option to stay balanced. Seeing her compliance, Victor quietly urged the horse forward. The animal sprang into a trot, catching Sylvia off guard. She cried out and was thrown back against his solid frame, her hands grabbing him instinctively for support. A small, knowing smile appeared on Victor's face. This was exactly what he wanted. As the horse settled into a steady pace, Sylvia was pressed firmly against him. Wrapped securely in his arms, she could feel the steady beat of his heart. Their impromptu riding lesson had begun, with the student and teacher much closer than she ever expected. As the horse moved at a gentle pace, Sylvia's heart pounded with excitement. The view from this high up was incredible, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She wished she could have learned to ride sooner, but her past responsibilities had never allowed for such luxuries. She looked at the Duke, assuming he got to enjoy these peaceful moments all the time. But Victor's reality was completely different. While she saw beautiful landscapes, his mind drifted to the red and fierce sights he was far more accustomed to. His sudden seriousness made Sylvia pause. She remembered his time as a decorated soldier. This quiet, scenic ride was just as new for him as it was for her. Victor silently acknowledged that he had never ridden a horse so slowly in his entire life. The tranquil journey was a shared, unfamiliar experience for them both. Riding closely with Victor, Sylvia struggled to understand his intentions. Was he genuinely enjoying a hobby with her, or was this just a favor? She knew his reputation as a fierce man who lived for the hunt. Her mind pictured a savage warrior surrounded by swords and arrows, yet his actions never matched that image. He wasn't reckless or haphazard. Though she had once feared a man with his past might be cruel, he had always treated her with respect. Sometime later, Victor summoned her. He simply announced that he was going hunting in the West, which only reinforced her perception of him. She realized she'd never seen him enjoy quiet hobbies like reading a book or listening to music. At dinner, his simplicity was even more obvious. He was completely unaware of the special effort the chef put into his meals, remarking that everything was delicious. It was clear to Sylvia that the powerful Duke was not a gourmet. As Victor's subordinates arrived to deliver their reports, Sylvia observed the interaction from a distance. Their behavior was polite, but stiffly formal. It dawned on her that the Duke didn't seem to have any real friends, only soldiers and servants who kept a respectful distance. This realization changed her perspective on his passion for hunting. Perhaps he wasn't driven by a thirst for action, but simply because it was the only way he knew how to fill his empty time. She found herself thinking that his life seemed incredibly lonely. People would surely laugh at the idea of pitying the powerful Victor Aswan, but she couldn't help it. To the rest of the world, he was a ruthless slayer, a man defined by his reputation. But Sylvia had seen a different side of him, one that knew how to care and even joke. As she rode behind him, leaning against his back for support, she held on to this private truth. He brought their horse to a gentle stop before a serene, sparkling river. Victor announced they would be taking a break at the creek. While he led their horse to the water's edge to drink, Sylvia couldn't resist the cool, sparkling stream. She slipped off her shoes and waded in, enjoying the refreshing sensation as she playfully splashed about. Her peaceful moment was cut short when Victor's horse suddenly shook its head, drenching her in a spray of cold water. Startled, Sylvia cried out in frustration. She complained that her dress was now soaked, glaring at the horse as if it understood her. Her annoyance only deepened when she caught Victor trying to hide a smirk. She shot him a look and told him not to laugh, reminding him that it was his horse's fault. A moment later, a mischievous idea sparked. Deciding two could play at that game, she sent a massive splash of water right back at the Duke, getting her revenge. He was completely drenched, but her playful protest that she only sprayed him once fell on deaf ears. Victor just grinned, completely unfazed by being drenched. With a smirk, he cheekily insisted that his horse was the one to blame. Not buying it for a second, Sylvia called him stupid and sent another wave of water his way. Their playful spat quickly escalated into a full-blown water fight. Sylvia complained that he wasn't playing fair, so she decided to even the odds. Grabbing his leg, she yanked him right into the creek with her. The splash was enormous. But when Victor surfaced, he wasn't angry at all. Instead, he let out a genuine, hearty laugh and playfully ruffled her wet hair. Once they were back on the bank, Sylvia worried aloud if they could even ride a horse while being so soaked. She immediately got flustered, telling him she didn't mean for him to stare. The light-hearted mood shifted. Victor's expression softened as he gently cupped her face and leaned in close, changing the dynamic between them. The playful atmosphere between them vanished in an instant. With his expression now serious, Victor leaned in closer. He gently tucked a strand of wet hair behind Sylvia's ear, his fingers brushing against her skin. Her heart started to pound in her chest. But he didn't go for a kiss. Instead, he lowered his head, burying his face in the crook of her neck. A small, surprised sound escaped Sylvia's lips. She instinctively grabbed onto his back as he pulled her into a firm embrace. The unexpected closeness sent a jolt right through her. He held her tightly, his breath warm against her skin, leaving her completely stunned. Overwhelmed by the sudden and intense shift, Sylvia's mind went totally blank. She was flustered, flushed, and at a complete loss for what to say or do next. The moment hung in the air, charged with a new kind of energy that neither of them had anticipated. Completely overwhelmed by the intense embrace, Sylvia's mind raced for an escape. She stammered that she had to get back to the castle, making up a clumsy excuse about a new sewing machine arriving. For a long moment, Victor just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he let her go. He quietly told her to go back and turn to leave, making her think the tense moment was finally over. But he wasn't leaving her behind. Victor returned with his horse and simply told her to get on. He helped her into the saddle before positioning himself right behind her, his arms caging her in as he took the reins. Pressed against his chest, Sylvia was hyper-aware of his presence. She thought about the person behind her, Victor Aswan. For the first time, in this quiet moment, she wasn't seeing the cold-hearted Duke or her captor, but finally him as a man. This realization left her more flustered than ever. A month passed quicker than Sylvia expected, meaning one thing. Duke Aswan's break from duty was officially over. The day had come for him to leave for the battlefield once again. Clutching a yellow handkerchief, Sylvia recalled a past conversation. Victor had once misunderstood her, believing she had no desire for him to return. He'd even offered a white handkerchief, a symbol of a final goodbye. But he didn't know the full story. Sylvia had always known a yellow handkerchief was a prayer for a safe return, and she'd secretly used all of hers hoping he'd come back before. This time, she had prepared a new one herself. She told herself she should be happy he was leaving, as this was what she wanted. But as she held the delicate fabric, a wave of confusion washed over her. If she truly wanted him gone, why did her heart feel so heavy with sadness? Clutching the yellow handkerchief, Sylvia's conflicted feelings gave way to a single, urgent need. She walked right up to Victor as he stood ready to depart. Her voice was steady as she called out to the Duke, sincerely asking him to please come back. A confident smile touched Victor's lips. He stepped closer and playfully asked if she was going to send him off without a proper goodbye kiss. Before Sylvia could even react, he gently cupped her cheek and leaned in. In that quiet, tender moment, all of Sylvia's confusion melted away. She wished it could go on forever. The kiss ended too soon, and Victor was already on his horse. Fueled by a sudden desperation, Sylvia yelled out that he must come back safely. Victor looked over his shoulder, his gaze serious but soft. He promised he would try his best. Then, with a final look, he turned and rode away, leaving her standing alone with her newfound clarity. A full year passed since Victor rode off to war. For Sylvia, the feeling of emptiness never quite faded. Her duties as the Duchess became easier, but a deep sense of boredom settled in. The grand estate, once just a house, now felt uncomfortably large and lonely for one person. Every night, she looked to the stars, repeating the same quiet hope for his speedy return. Then, one day, a maid burst into her room with urgent footsteps. The Duke had returned. Sylvia froze in disbelief before her feet carried her down the stairs. And there he was. Victor stood at the entrance, and Sylvia's heart soared. But her joy quickly turned to utter shock. He wasn't alone. Held carefully in his arms was a small, sleeping baby. All Sylvia could do was stare, stunned, as she questioned what she was seeing. A heavy silence hangs in the grand hall as Victor and Sylvia face each other from opposite ends of the room. Their expressions are unreadable, but the distance between them says everything. Without a single word, Sylvia takes a firm step and walks right past him, her footsteps echoing through the empty space. Later, at dinner, the atmosphere is just as cold. A servant brings them food, but they sit at opposite ends of a long, lonely table. Sylvia quietly picks at her salad, completely absorbed in her own thoughts. Victor finally breaks the silence, but only to announce his departure. He says a simple goodbye and pushes his chair back. After he leaves, Sylvia also leaves the room. That night, she is fast asleep in her bed, seemingly at peace. But she isn't alone. Victor sits quietly on the edge of her mattress, his gaze fixed on her sleeping form, revealing a hidden concern beneath his stoic exterior. Back in her room, Sylvia's mind is a storm of betrayal and confusion. Tossing and turning, she can't believe how insensitive Victor is, seemingly unaware of her feelings. While she spent a year praying for his safe return, he was apparently starting a new family. In one morning, she was forced into motherhood, a role she never asked for. She had desperately wanted him to come home, but now, all she wants is for him to leave. Suddenly, her eyes snap open. Victor is sitting right there, on her bed. She sits up, her voice firm, and asks him the one question burning in her mind. Where did he get that baby? Victor just smirks, repeating her question back to her as if it's some kind of joke. That's the final straw. Filled with rage, Sylvia's hand flies out, striking him hard across the chest. Stunned, he demands to know why she hit him. She yells back, furious that he would even need to ask. Furious, Sylvia demands to know if Victor expects her to just let this go. Why did he suddenly bring a child into their home? Completely missing her point, Victor asks why she's in a bad mood. Seeing he doesn't get it, she climbs into the bed to confront him directly. She paints him a picture, asking how he would feel if she came home with another man's baby and claimed it was his. With a sharp tone, she reminds him that this exact thing happened to him once before. Her words trigger a dark memory for Victor. He recalls a past betrayal where another woman tried to deceive him in the very same way. His calm exterior finally cracks. He admits that he once felt the same crushing anger she feels now. But his understanding quickly turns to fury. He grabs her by the collar, pulling her close and demanding to know if this is her twisted way of getting revenge on him. Grabbing Victor, Sylvia demands to know if he planned to have this child. He denies it immediately, but she presses on, screaming for an answer about where the baby came from. He finally admits the boy is his, but then questions why she's so obsessed with the details. Her anger crumbles, and tears well up in her eyes. She confesses that it's the only thing she can think about. Taking his hand, Sylvia admits her real fear, that he'll take another woman as his wife. She then rests her head on his chest, her fight completely gone. As she lies there, Victor's mind drifts back. He remembers their past, how her boldness initially surprised him. He had offered her a home because she reminded him of his own lonely childhood, a kid abandoned with nowhere to go. He had seen a part of himself in her from the very beginning. Sylvia's strength finally gives out. Resting against Victor's chest, she reveals a devastating secret. The overwhelming stress of recent events caused her to lose their child. She confesses that the emotional pain is almost unbearable. Hearing this, Victor pulls her into a tight, comforting embrace. He admits that through all of this, his thoughts were only of her. Her tension melts away. Sylvia wishes he had told her sooner, finding solace in his words. Victor gently pats her head, silently reassuring her. The argument is over, replaced by a shared moment of grief and understanding. Later, they lie together in bed, the conflict behind them. Sylvia's heart pounds as she looks up at him, a soft smile finally returning to her face. He gazes down at her with a tender expression. The distance between them closes, and it's clear their relationship has found a new, deeper level of connection. Sylvia prepares for her first official social gathering. Her heart flutters with a mix of nerves and excitement as her maids praise her stunning purple gown. She agrees that for her debut, she must look her best, offering them a warm, grateful smile. As a finishing touch, she slides a dazzling ring onto her gloved finger, a quiet symbol of her place beside him. With her confidence solidified, Sylvia descends the grand staircase, the sound of her heels echoing softly on the marble steps. Victor waits patiently at the bottom, looking sharp in his formal uniform. His eyes meet hers, and he speaks with a calm finality, acknowledging her arrival. The simple words carry the weight of their recent reconciliation. The storm between them has finally passed, leaving a quiet and steady understanding in its wake. They are ready to face the world, together. As Sylvia reaches the bottom of the grand staircase, her heart thumps in her chest. Victor meets her gaze with a knowing smirk, teasingly observing that she seems so pleased she's at a loss for words. Flustered by his directness, Sylvia lets out a nervous laugh and asks what he could possibly mean. He points out that while she initially claimed she didn't want to go, she now looks pretty excited for the event. His teasing melts away as he gently touches her cheek, his expression softening. He tells her simply that she's beautiful, a sincere compliment that makes her blush. Soon, they are seated in a grand carriage, the steady rhythm of horse hooves marking their journey. The playful mood shifts. Victor looks out the window with a serious expression, warning her that the party won't be enjoyable. He explains that the other guests aren't particularly kind people. Sylvia listens in silence, a new understanding dawning on her. It seems her husband isn't exactly welcome among the other nobles. Sylvia responds to her husband's warning with a confident smile. She reassures him that it's fine, pointing out that she's been hardened by past difficulties. Seeing her resolve, Victor smirks, impressed by her strength. Sylvia internally decides that if the nobles won't respect Victor, she will simply earn their respect for him. Plus, she has her dependable little wingman with her. Their carriage soon arrives at the Grand Hall. A steward announces the entrance of Duke Victor and Duchess Sylvia Aswan. For a moment, all eyes are on them. Sylvia proudly hopes everyone sees how magnificent Victor looks. But then, in a silent, coordinated snub, the entire crowd turns away, leaving them completely isolated. Sylvia is stunned by the blatant rejection. Victor, however, seems unfazed. He informs her that he's going to find a room to rest in. He explains that if he stays by her side, no one will dare approach her, confirming just how deep the nobility's disdain for him runs. As Victor walks away, Sylvia watches him go, a soft expression on her face. She realizes his indifferent act is just a front. Deep down, he cares a great deal. Feeling a pang of sympathy, she grabs his sleeve, telling him to trust her and get some rest. Victor is taken aback by her support, a small smile gracing his lips as he leaves her to it. Alone now, Sylvia sits elegantly with her son, Jess, sleeping soundly in his carriage. It isn't long before a few ladies approach, cooing over how cute the baby is. But in the background, whispers begin to circulate. The nobles start pointing, wondering if she's the wife of the disgraced duke. One woman approaches with a sly smile and asks a pointed question, "Whose child is that?" Sylvia is momentarily shocked by the blatant disrespect, but her composure returns in an instant. She knows this woman is just trying to provoke her. With a perfect, practiced smile, Sylvia reintroduces herself as Sylvia Aswan. She proudly states that Duke Victor is her husband, and this is her son, Jess. The noblewoman's question, dripping with disdain, hangs in the air. Did Sylvia truly have a child with that man? Sylvia's hand tightens into a fist. She internally fumes, reminding herself that Victor has a name and a title he earned heroically on the battlefield. These nobles, jealous of his achievements, just call him war-crazed. She knew they disliked him, but never imagined the hate ran this deep. Composing herself, Sylvia beams a brilliant smile. She proudly confirms that yes, this is Duke Aswan's only son. Not finished, and refusing to let the woman get away with the insult, she invites the ladies to have a closer look at Jess. They quickly gather around, admiring the cute baby. Just when it seems Sylvia has won, the instigator leans in close. She whispers an incredibly invasive question, crudely asking if the Duke's violent reputation followed him into the marriage bed. Sylvia freezes, shocked by the woman's sheer audacity. The noblewoman leans in, her smile turning cruel. Whispering just between women, she asks an unbelievably invasive question about Sylvia's private life. She continues her vile speculation, suggesting Victor must be just as rough with his wife as he is on the battlefield, and that he only cares for his own satisfaction. Sylvia is stunned for a moment before her anger flares, and she shoves the woman's fan away. This nasty rumor has a source, as other ladies recall a chilling incident from the past. A chatty lord once made the mistake of mocking Victor, commenting that he stank of blood. In an instant, Victor grabbed the man by his collar, lifting him clear off the ground. He delivered a terrifying threat about what would happen if they ever met again, squeezing the man's face to emphasize his point. The terrified lord was never seen at a social gathering again, and Victor's fearsome reputation was set in stone. Sylvia tells herself to stay patient and calm down, but she feels completely isolated. The whispers prove her right. The other ladies are certain they know exactly what kind of man the Duke is. One woman suddenly grabs another's hand, offering Sylvia her pity. She declares that while she doesn't know how Sylvia ended up with such an awful person, she'll be cheering for her. She even offers legal help from her cousin, clearly assuming the worst about Sylvia's marriage. Sylvia is stunned. Does this woman really think she's a victim? Her composure finally cracks, and her hand clenches into a tight fist in her lap. Noticing her distress, the noblewoman presses on, insisting that something is wrong and pleading for her to share. Taking a steadying breath, Sylvia admits that there is something troubling her. As she thinks about where to begin, the gossiping ladies lean closer, hungry for every word. Sylvia finally addresses the eager crowd, but not with the story they expect. She calmly states that since they'll all hear the rumors about how she and Victor met, she won't bother repeating them. Instead, she leans in and shares a little secret. Her husband has an unexpected charm. One of the noblewomen immediately interrupts, giggling that she read about men like that in a book, dominant by day, but different at night. Before Sylvia can react to the crude remark, the noblewoman continues. She explains how Victor was so worried about her and their child that he threatened the entire staff before leaving, warning them that they'd pay if any harm came to his family. Sighing that he worries too much, Sylvia holds up a hand, showing off a stunning ring. She cheerfully explains it was a gift from Victor after he took care of several enemies. With a brilliant smile, Sylvia complains that it's almost troublesome how he gives her everything she wants, leaving the gossipers completely speechless. Sylvia explains that Victor's harshness is a necessity. He goes to war to protect her and everyone else, and his tough exterior is simply because the job is so difficult. She admits understanding why they might get the wrong idea, but assures them he truly treasures her. With a blissful smile, Sylvia confesses she's also completely smitten with him. The noblewomen are taken aback, seemingly convinced by her romantic tale. Internally, Sylvia notes that her story is working, even if she did exaggerate a bit. But she isn't finished. Pretending to cry, she says she's glad they've cleared up the misunderstanding. Then, she drops a chilling warning. There's no telling what Victor would do if he found her upset. The ladies flinch in unison. Sylvia clarifies she only wants to prevent more misunderstandings, because if rumors spread, they might just end up like that one chatty lord. The threat hangs heavy in the air. With a disarmingly sweet smile, Sylvia leans in and adds her final, chilling remark. She tells the women she really doesn't want what happened to that chatty lord to happen again, asking if they'll help her prevent any more misunderstandings. The ladies sweat and quickly agree. Sylvia isn't done yet. She cheerfully announces she's memorized all their faces. She plans to invite them to the castle soon for a personal introduction to her husband. That way, she explains, Victor can get to know them all, too. With the threat delivered, she politely excuses herself and her child, claiming she had a wonderful time. The moment she's in the hallway, her polite mask crumbles. Her heels click sharply against the floor as she fumes, unable to believe she even considered getting along with high society. She throws open the door to her room where Victor is waiting. He calls her name, and without a word, she rushes into his arms. As Victor holds Sylvia, he gently strokes her back, sensing her tension. He guesses she must not have had pleasant conversations. She denies it was a waste of time, but when he asks what upset her, her frustration spills out. She declares that high society is full of idiots who spout nonsense, convinced they're always right. He calmly asks for an example. Sylvia explains they were speaking ill of him, calling him a savage who carves people up on the battlefield. To her complete shock, Victor simply agrees, stating that it's the truth. Stunned, Sylvia pulls back to look him in the eye, asking if he actually enjoys the horrors of war. Does he keep fighting because he loves it? Victor's expression is grim as he denies it. He explains a harsh reality. A war will not end if neither side surrenders. He is simply the one who ensures it does. As Sylvia processes Victor's grim reality, she's hit with the full weight of his sacrifice. He wanted the war to end more than anyone, and that duty is precisely what kept him away from home. Leaning against him, she begins to cry, thinking of the horrid nobles who live in comfort because of his efforts. She looks at his calm face and wonders why he isn't angry. It's as if he's completely used to being treated this way, and the thought that he's lived his entire life this way is heartbreaking. Her anger flares up on his behalf. She demands to know why people hate him without reason when he's the one who fights for the empire. Victor simply pats her back, gently reminding her that she hated him once, too. Sylvia flinches at the truth in his words. She quickly argues that was different. He had threatened her back then. Now she knows what an amazing person he is. Getting flustered, she declares that even if he acts like a savage, she's the only one who gets to say it. Moved, Victor softly calls her name. Victor is visibly moved, thanking Sylvia for her kind words. However, he can't accept them, insisting he isn't the good person she imagines. He grimly confesses that he's inhumane, his hands forever stained by the terrible deeds required on the battlefield. Clenching his fist, he states that the only thing they are good for is ending conflicts permanently. But Sylvia immediately rejects his self-loathing. Taking his hand, she reminds him of all the gentle things he's done for her. He used these same hands to bring her flowers, to softly tuck her hair back, and to hold her in a warm embrace. She insists that because his hands do things she loves, they are kind hands. Looking him in the eye, Sylvia tells him to ignore his critics. She places a hand over his heart, declaring that she's proud of him. With unwavering conviction, she calls him her hero, leaving Victor speechless at her absolute faith in him. Overwhelmed by her faith, a gentle smile spreads across Victor's face. As Sylvia looks at him, she can't understand how anyone could call this man a cruel warmonger. But then his demeanor shifts. He softly touches her face, asking why she always leaves out the things that make her happiest. Before she can process his question, he swiftly pushes her back onto the chaise lounge, hovering over her. Her heart pounds in her chest as he pins her gaze with his own. He takes her hand, squeezing it gently, and asks if she truly dislikes this kind of intimacy. Flustered and confused, Sylvia demands to know what he's doing. Leaning in closer, Victor smirks. He tells her that if she's unsure, he'll be happy to show her properly. His intentions become crystal clear as he makes a bold move, his hand sliding upward. Sylvia lets out a sharp gasp, completely taken by surprise at his sudden confidence and forwardness. Sylvia flinches as Victor leans closer, his intentions clear. With a blush spreading across her face, she desperately protests, telling him they can't do this here. Not when Jess might wake up. But Victor isn't deterred. He simply tells her that their child won't stir as long as she remains quiet. Still, Sylvia hesitates, insisting this isn't the right place. Accepting her point, Victor declares that they'll just have to go somewhere else. The scene transitions to the bright next morning. Sylvia awakens in a soft bed, the memories of the previous night feeling like a hazy, wonderful dream. A little disoriented, she reaches out, only to find the space beside her empty. Her eyes finally land on Victor, already dressed in his formal uniform near the bed. Confused, she quietly asks where he is going. Victor explains that he has an audience with His Majesty. Since they both left the party so abruptly, he believes it is his duty to at least make an appearance. His composed demeanor proves that, even after all that has passed between them, his responsibilities remain. Still groggy from the night before, Sylvia asks if she needs to accompany him. Victor calmly tells her to stay and get some more rest. He explains that he has official business with His Majesty, with matters to hear and a report of his own to deliver. He reassures her that the king already heard about her arrival yesterday, so a formal introduction can wait for another time. Promising to be back soon, he leans in to give her a gentle kiss on the forehead before leaving the room. Time ticks by, but Victor doesn't return. The previous night feels like a hazy, wonderful dream, and the aftereffects leave her feeling sore but content. A maid brings in baby Jess, and Sylvia holds him close, her motherly duties a welcome distraction. As she gently pats the baby's back, her thoughts drift back to Victor's words. The phrase, "something to report," echoes in her mind, and a chilling possibility takes root. Her heart sinks as she wonders if he's being sent back to war. As the hours stretch on, Victor still hasn't returned from the palace. Sylvia holds baby Jess, whose happy giggles offer small comfort in the quiet room. She cuddles him close, a genuine smile gracing her lips as she realizes raising a child isn't so bad after all. But her newfound peace is fragile. Victor's words from the morning echo in her mind, that he had something to report. A chilling thought forms. Could he be reporting for duty? Her heart plummets at the possibility of him being sent back to war. She thinks back to when she first ran away, determined to live only for herself. Then, she believed simply staying safe and fed was enough. Now, holding Jess and waiting for Victor, she understands she has so much more to lose. The quiet, happy life she just started to build feels like it could shatter at any moment. As she holds baby Jess, Sylvia is surprised to find a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. She admits to herself that she truly enjoys taking care of him. Her thoughts drift to the future, and she pictures Jess having a little sibling to play with. She wonders what a child with Victor would look like. Would they have his dark hair and blue eyes, or her blonde hair and brown eyes? The realization hits her suddenly. She actually wants to have a child with Victor. It's a shocking desire, one she never would have considered before. But this newfound domestic bliss is fragile. The grim reality of their situation returns. The war isn't over, which means Victor will likely be called back to the front. Steeling herself, Sylvia resolves to be strong enough to raise Jess alone if she must. Just then, the door clicks open. Victor stands there, apologizing for being so late. Without a second thought, all her hardened resolve melts away. Sylvia rushes forward and throws her arms around him, overcome with relief. Victor holds Sylvia close, softly saying her name. With tears welling in her eyes, she asks why he was so late, explaining she waited for what felt like an eternity. She tries to sound brave, promising she'll be okay with whatever news he has. Victor, however, seems confused by her words. He looks down at her and asks if she really thought he would know what was troubling her. Sylvia's worst fear is confirmed. She pulls back and asks if the Emperor is sending him back to war. Her panic turns to frustration as she thinks about how he's being used. Her thoughts spiral as she imagines all the dangers of the battlefield, poison, spies, and enemy ambushes. The gruesome image of him being seriously injured flashes through her mind. Overwhelmed by these terrifying thoughts, she begins to cry. Clutching his uniform, Sylvia confesses that she's scared because she has finally fallen in love with him. Looking up at him with pleading eyes, she asks if he really has to leave again. Clinging to Victor, Sylvia desperately begs him not to go. In her panic, she blurts out that she would rather run away with him than see him return to the battlefield. The bold confession seems to surprise even her. But Victor's reaction is not what she expected. He lets out a soft chuckle, which quickly turns into a warm laugh, leaving Sylvia completely confused. He gently cups her face, teasingly asking if she has always had such a cute side to her. Flustered by his lightheartedness, she questions how he can joke at a time like this. His playful expression softens into a serious one. He calmly states that he is not going anywhere. Stunned, Sylvia asks if his vacation was simply extended. Victor then prompts her to think about the party they attended earlier. He reveals it was a grand celebration meant to officially announce the end of the war. They were supposed to be the guests of honor, but they had left too early. Sylvia processes his words, her mind racing to catch up. Victor clarifies that the enemy ruler has finally sent notice of his official surrender. The news hits her all at once. The fear and anxiety that have plagued her for so long melt away, replaced by pure, overwhelming relief. Tears of joy well up in her eyes as she whispers in disbelief. Overcome with emotion, she throws her arms around him, confessing that this feels like a dream. But Victor gently stops her, stating that he isn't finished yet. Sylvia's happiness wavers for a second as she asks if he's about to say this isn't real. He reassures her that it is. Then, in a move that stuns her, Victor lowers himself to one knee. He takes her hand gently, bringing it to his lips for a tender kiss. Looking up at her with unwavering sincerity, he asks Sylvia if she will marry him, for real this time. She can only stare back, completely speechless. Victor remembers what a soldier once told him about love, that it makes the world stop and you even forget to breathe.
He'd thought it was silly at the time.
But on his wedding day, watching Sylvia approach him, he realized the exact same thing was happening to him. His thoughts were interrupted by Sylvia's teasing voice. She asked what was on his mind, playfully wondering if he was already smitten with her. Victor simply leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her forehead, warmly admitting that he was head over heels for her. Sylvia called him silly, but her smile was bright. Their tender moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps. A man's voice commented on what a beautiful couple they made. They turned to find the king himself approaching, a pleasant look on his face as he greeted them. Sylvia observes the approaching monarch. She'd always imagined the man who sent Victor to war would be intimidating, but he seems far more approachable than she expected. The king leans in conspiratorially, telling Sylvia he can't believe Victor was hiding such a beautiful wife from everyone. He then pulls Victor into a friendly hug, teasing him about having so many secrets. Victor simply replies that it's his personal life. The king laughs, explaining to Sylvia that for the longest time, he thought Victor had no intention of ever marrying. He jokes that this must be why Victor kept her hidden away. With a fond look, the king recalls the day Victor asked for his permission. He tells Sylvia it was quite a sight, adding that he'd never seen the Duke look so sincere before. A hearty laugh follows at the memory, causing Victor to groan in embarrassment. It's clear the king has a much more vibrant personality than they imagined. The king laughs, thoroughly enjoying the Duke's flustered reaction. He playfully confesses that Victor's sincerity was so overwhelming, it almost made him reconsider stamping the marriage certificate. A light bulb goes off for Sylvia. She finally understands why Victor was late on the day he proposed. The memory of the king's teasing fades as their grand wedding ceremony reaches its beautiful conclusion. After exchanging their heartfelt vows, they are pronounced husband and wife, sealing their oath with a gentle kiss, while the guests applaud warmly. Life after the wedding is a welcome change. Sylvia reflects on their joyful celebration, noting that Victor no longer stays away from the castle for long. He now fills his days by her side, patiently teaching her new skills like horseback riding. He gives her careful instructions, ensuring she feels safe. These quiet, shared moments build a comfortable and genuine intimacy between them, marking the true beginning of their life together. It was Sylvia's turn to teach Victor a skill. As he tried embroidery for the first time, she teased him to be careful with the gentle fabric. To her surprise, he was a natural. She looked at his finished piece, admitting his first attempt was far better than hers. As she admired the delicate stitching, Victor leaned in and mentioned that it was the same type of flower he had once sent to her. A warm smile spread across Sylvia's face as she told him she liked it. Their quiet life together soon included a new joy, their son, Jess. They preferred to care for him themselves instead of relying on maids. One afternoon, Sylvia found Victor holding their beautifully dressed baby. As Jess babbled "Papa," she couldn't help but smile. In a tender moment, he reached for her, calling out "Mama." Sylvia held him close, reflecting on how sweet her life had become. She couldn't imagine ever being apart from Victor. Later that night, Sylvia calls out to Victor with a thoughtful expression. She admits she's always wondered why he didn't just kick her out at the beginning. She was a strange woman in his house, and he could have easily disposed of her without anyone knowing. Sylvia explains that she has come up with 3 possible theories. The first, she says with a blush, is that he was captivated by her beauty, though she dismisses this as unlikely. The second is more practical. As an unmarried man returning from war, he simply needed a wife. Her third option is that he just couldn't be bothered with the effort it would take to kill her. Victor remains playfully evasive. When she presses him for the real answer, he smoothly pulls her down, changing the dynamic entirely. Leaning close, he asks if the reason is truly that important. Unflustered, Sylvia tells him not to change the subject. As golden morning light fills the chamber, a new quiet settles over them. Sylvia sleeps peacefully while Victor watches her, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. Whatever happened in the night has clearly forged their understanding anew, marking the true beginning of their life as a united pair. The morning after their relationship completely changed, Sylvia wakes up beside Victor. She voices her disbelief, stating there's no way he could have fallen in love with her at first sight. Victor simply confirms it was always the case, wondering aloud why she hadn't realized it sooner. His thoughts then drift back to the beginning. He vividly recalls being on a campaign when his men started gossiping about his secret marriage, one he knew absolutely nothing about. While Sylvia was at the castle, touched by what she perceived as his romantic nature, Victor processed the truth. He had an imposter in his home. He unsheathed his sword with a grim expression, coldly acknowledging her boldness. This woman was a fraud, and his first instinct was clear. He had to return home and eliminate her immediately. The morning after, Sylvia questions Victor, finding it hard to believe he fell for her at first sight. He simply confirms it was true, and his mind flashes back to their chaotic beginning. He remembers returning from war to find an imposter in his home. Sylvia was audaciously giving orders to have him fed and clothed, completely unaware of who he was. He internally questioned her motives for pretending to be his wife. Playing along, he confronted her about the child she claimed to be carrying. She confirmed she was 1 month along, giving Victor the perfect justification. A woman raising a child alone would be difficult, so he decided to keep her in the castle. With a chilling smile, he ordered the maids to ensure her safety. He made it clear that their lives were tied to the survival of his heir. His methods were cold, and his intentions were simple. He needed to keep her right where she was. As Victor's flashback continues, he rationalizes his decision, figuring that if she had nowhere else to go, she might as well stay. The fact that she was a trespasser didn't bother him. In his mind, a woman like her wouldn't make a bad wife. He smoothly asks for her name. When she introduces herself as Sylvia Lauren, he quickly corrects her with a smile. She was Sylvia Aswan now. Later that night, he found her asleep in a chair in his room. He noticed her pleasant scent and felt an urge to get closer, but he stopped himself cold. He saw himself as a man defined by war, constantly covered in the metaphorical stench of the battlefield. He remembered a day he desperately tried to wash it all away, even cutting his long hair and bathing for hours. The memory fades, showing him back at the military camp. He suddenly mutters aloud that the entire situation is crazy, making his nearby soldiers jump in surprise. The soldiers snap to attention and apologize for their chatter, but Victor isn't listening. He's completely lost in his own thoughts, admitting to himself that he's confused. His mind flashes to Sylvia, remembering her telling him to return safely. He feels a strange tightness in his chest and a sudden, overwhelming urge to get back to the castle. He now thinks of that place as his home, and he's ready to deal with anyone who tries to stop him from returning. Wandering into a field, he picks a yellow flower. He notes how delicate it is and how its pleasant scent reminds him of her. Back inside his tent, a subordinate approaches cautiously to make a report. He stops short, staring at the flower in his commander's hand. He nervously asks if it's a new kind of weapon shaped like one. Victor looks at the bloom and calmly states that it's just a flower. Something for admiring. His soldier is left completely speechless. 2 soldiers watch in complete disbelief as their commander holds a single yellow flower. A younger subordinate approaches Victor, excitedly asking if he plans to send it to his wife. The soldier even offers to deliver it himself, since he has leave tomorrow and the castle is on his way home. Victor considers it for a moment. He knows the delicate bloom would wilt long before it ever reached her, and he imagines Sylvia's disappointed expression. Trying to hide a small smile, Victor rejects the offer. Instead, he rewards the soldier's good intentions by extending his vacation by an entire week. Later, the grateful subordinate returns, presenting Victor with a gift from Sylvia. She sent an embroidered yellow handkerchief, wanting to give him something that would reach him safely. The soldier explains that she is eagerly awaiting his return, noting that the yellow handkerchief symbolizes waiting for a loved one. While other men clutch letters and lockets from home, Victor now holds his own precious memento. He quietly claims it as his. Victor brings the yellow handkerchief to his face, the soft fabric a tangible link to his wife. His mind travels back in time, replaying precious moments. He sees himself on one knee, asking a stunned Sylvia to officially marry him. The memory shifts to them dancing under the stars, where she warmly accepted his proposal. Another memory surfaces, a peaceful morning in their sunlit room. Sylvia gently touches his cheek, asking what he would name a younger sibling for their child. The sudden question makes him freeze for a moment. She then asks if he's ever thought about her getting pregnant, and he confirms that he has. He suggests the name Jewel. Sylvia's face lights up with a beautiful smile, and she tells him she likes it. They share a tender kiss and embrace, confessing their love for one another. Back on the cold battlefield, clutching the small piece of cloth, Victor is lost in the warmth of what he's fighting to return to.